In the name of God, and hello to everybody that is listening to me. If you remember, last time I started a topic about the endocrine physiology, and in two other files that I sent you before, I started an introduction about to tell you about the endocrine system, how the cells are connected to each other, and how these cells find chemical ligands or chemical messengers to send signal from one cell to another. One of the chemical communication pathway was endocrine. That endocrine was a hormone, use a chemical to that is named as hormone, and this chemical enter the blood circulation, and from blood circulation it will, by using blood circulation, this hormone uh, is able to distribute all around the body. And this endocrine system, I told you, that is a concept that is evolving. It is not fixed, and now we know that there are lots of cells that have endocrine function. But according to the program of your lesson and the time limit that we have, from now I am going to focus on the main endocrine gland of the body. I'm not going to say that whole endocrine system is this organ that I am discussing, but according to your program and your curriculum and the time, we select to discuss about these endocrine glands. And one of the very first item that I start to discuss is the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, because you know that hypothalamus and pituitary gland not only are a source for are source for releasing hormone, but also they are involved in the regulation of other endocrine gland. Therefore, the topic that I start now, and I think it is, I divide this topic into two parts, because I do not want to have a heavy file. Therefore, I will finish this part around 30 to 35 minutes, and then another 35 minutes. Try to discuss about this gland. When we are, therefore, this is the outline of this topic that you see: the pituitary gland, hypothalamus, hypophyseal portal circulation. What is the portal circulation? Neurohypophysis, synthesis of the oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone, adenohypophysis, the hormones that are released from adenohypophysis or anterior pituitary gland, the concept of endocrine axis, the hormones that are released from the hypothalamus and regulate the pituitary gland hormone, growth hormone, physiological function of growth hormone, hormonal control of growth hormone, regulation of growth hormone, and all. Finally, I will have a very short discussion about the role of growth hormone in aging and normal physiological aging. As I told you, I try to not allow the file to be very short, very long. Therefore, it may be divided into 2 to 3 files. Okay, when we are talking about the hypothalamus, we should know that hypothalamus is a unique part of the endocrine system, because it is also a part of the nervous system. And you can see that the hypothalamus is placed around the third ventricle, and then cells are completely neuron structure. They receive thousands and millions of thousands of synapses from other area of the brain, and therefore we can consider them as endocrine gland. But on the other hand, they are a part of endocrine system because they release hormones into the blood. I am going to tell you that hypothalamus function like a bridge between the endocrine system and the nervous system. relay the information from the nervous system into the information and the signals in the endocrine glands, and therefore allow the endocrine glands to be completely synchronized with the nervous system, and allow them to work in a synchronized way. Hypothalamus itself is being connected to, this is showing the structure of the cells of the hypothalamus, the lateral hypothalamus, medial and periventricular area that you see in the sagittal section, and this is the third ventricle that I told you it is placed around it. And when you have a look at this hypothalamic area, you can see that hypothalamus have an anatomical connection with the pituitary gland. Anterior pituitary gland and posterior pituitary gland are connected by a structure that is named as pituitary stalk. The pituitary gland itself is divided into one part that placed anterior and another posterior. The anterior pituitary gland also is named as adenohypophyse, that is the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Itself is composed of pars tuberalis, pars intermedia, and pars distalis. And the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland is named as a neurohypophyse. Therefore, we are engaged with two completely separate parts that are separated by the pars intermedia. And you see that the axons that are sending the signal from hypothalamus are completely different to the for the anterior pituitary gland and posterior pituitary gland. If I want to start to discuss about this system, firstly, I start with the neurohypophyse. As you know, and as you see in this figure, neurohypophyse, in fact, is a part of the hypothalamus. In fact, the neurohypophyse, or posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, is the termination site for the axons that are originated from the hypothalamus. And these neurons that you see in this figure, in the paraventricular hypothalamic nucleus, in the supraoptic hypothalamic nuclei, or in the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus, the body of the neurons are placed in these nuclei, but axons are sending their end, the axon are elongated and went to the posterior pituitary gland or neurohypophyse. Therefore, I can say that neurohypophyse is the termination site or the releasing site for the neurons of the hypothalamus from these three main nuclei. And the hormones, from now I am saying I am calling them hormones because they are entering the blood. The hormones that are produced from inside these cells, these neurons, are released in the posterior pituitary gland or neurohypophyse. This figure shows a schematic figure. Again, you see the magnocellular neurosecretory cells that we have in the hypothalamus, and the axons that are being terminated in the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland or neurohypophyse. And in the neurohypophyse, we have a very dense network of capillary bed that is able to absorb, to uptake these hormones and distribute these hormones all around the body. This is a point that is completely different than the anterior pituitary gland, because in the anterior pituitary gland, the connection between the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary gland is just through the hormonal system, not physical neuronal mechanism or like this system. And for this reason, the neurohypophyse is named as neurohypophyse. Okay. In the neurohypophyse, the two main hormones are known to be released. And these two very known hormones are named as anterior, are named as antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. You know that these two hormones are very similar, and also they have. I will tell you that they have similar function in some aspects, but when you look at the gene of these hormones, you see that they have a very large gene, that there are several interons, that then this interon will be excluded, will be spliced, and then from the final messenger mRNA, a protein will be produced. That the protein is very large. This large protein is perihormone, not final hormone. And when these proteins are stored in the vesicle, and these vesicles are moving down from the hypothalamus to the posterior pituitary gland, gradually inside these vesicles, processing of this protein will happen, and therefore protein, the final hormone will be produced, and some other products, some other side products such as neurophysin and some glycoprotein also will be produced. I'm going to tell you that this process is very similar for both antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. Have a look at this figure. Provasopressin and prooxytocin are those proteins that I told you are produced firstly. And as you see, the oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone are a very short length of this large protein. The other part of this protein, for provasopressin, is a large protein named as neurophysin 2 and a glycoprotein, and for prooxytocin, a large protein that is named as neurophysin 1. After the processing happened, the final hormone that is released is oxytocin and vasopressin. And if you compare these two proteins together, have a look at them. Oxytocin and vasopressin, just they have difference in 2 amino acids. The other amino acids are the same. Then another point that you should consider is that, as you see, these hormones are peptide hormone. You remember last time I told you that hormones that consist of short amino acid chain are named as peptide hormone, and those who have a very long protein structure and more than 100 amino acids are named as protein hormones. Therefore, this is very clear that vasopressin and oxytocin are very similar to each other, and they have very small differences with each other. What about the neurophysin? Neurophysin 1 for the oxytocin, neurophysin 2 for the vasopressin. Until now, I'm not going to tell anything 100% sure, but by our knowledge, and until now, we believe that these proteins have no significant function in the body. But I'm sure that this is not completely true, because I expect that someday some function for this protein may be discovered. But for now, we say that these are byproduct of the production of the oxytocin and vasopressin. This is the process of their synthesis that I told you. If you have a look at this schematic figure, this shows a neuron that the cell body is placed in the hypothalamus. But when the alternative splicing happen and the messenger mRNA is produced, then in the reticulum endoplasmic, the protein is synthesized, and then you see the provasopressin or prooxytocin is stored inside the vesicles. When they are migrating from the hypothalamus to the posterior pituitary gland, during this migration, during this movement, gradually the processing will happen. And here we have provasopressin, and then when they come down, vasopressin and glycoprotein and neurophysin are being separated and produced. And in the final vesicle that we have in the axonal end, the vesicle contain mature hormone of neurophysin or mature hormone of oxytocin or vasopressin, and also neurophysin and glycoproteins. They are stored and are ready to be released every time that they need it. They are not released until the time that they receive the signal. The signal that stimulates the neuronal body of the hypothalamus will send the signal to the axonal end by action potential, and then at this axonal end, the hormones will be released into the bloodstream, and then the effect of hormone could be seen in the body. If I want to discuss and talk about the function of these two hormones, I can say that in the textbook, the whole thing that we have about the oxytocin or about the antidiuretic hormone is just these two paragraphs, very short paragraph. And this may bring us a misunderstanding that these hormones are not very important for us, but it is not true. For the antidiuretic hormone, as you see, the antidiuretic hormone, and the name is very clear, antidiuretic hormone is involved in the process of the kidney regulation and the regulation of the urine output. You know that it has a communication with the kidney, with the liver, the renin-angiotensin system, and the only function that is mentioned in the textbook is that antidiuretic hormone is responsible for regulation of osmolarity of the blood. There are some receptors in the hypothalamus that are sensitive to the osmolarity of blood. They are named as osmoreceptors. These osmoreceptors monitor all the time, monitor the osmolarity of the blood. Every time that osmolarity of blood is increasing, I mean that the content of the ions and factors, osmotic factor are increasing. On the other hand, I can say that water concentration is decreasing. Every time that the blood become hyperosmotic, these osmosensors will be activated and then stimulate the hypothalamus to release antidiuretic hormone. The name of antidiuretic hormone is very clear. It is against formation of urine. It works against the formation of and the loss of water in the urine. Therefore, it affects the kidney and stimulate the kidney to reabsorb as much as possible of water from the urine and concentrate urine to reabsorb the water. And this water will enter the blood and try to reset the osmolarity of the blood. You should know, but this is not only factor that regulate the osmolarity of blood. At the same time, the process of thirstiness will be started and we seek to drink water. On the other hand, the process of the stimulation of renin-angiotensin system, aldosterone, release of aldosterone also will be activated. The process of control of sweating also will preserve water. All these factors will work to restore the water to the blood and restore the osmolarity of the blood. But antidiuretic hormone is an important factor. and for this even affect the salivary gland. These all factors are involved in the function of the antidiuretic hormone. I'm not going to discuss more about this hormone because you know that you have kidney physiology with my dear colleague, and in that lesson you will return to the regulation of urine concentration and blood osmolarity, and you will return to this hormone again. For the oxytocin, this is the classical function of the antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. On the other hand, for the oxytocin also, the textbook has a paragraph, and a classical function that is known for the oxytocin is that oxytocin has two functions. One function is during the process of breastfeeding, when the baby is touching and sucking the breast of mother. This will stimulate the sensory system, and sensory system stimulate the hypothalamus to release oxytocin. And oxytocin stimulate the alveoli to the milk alveoli to contract and push the milk forward, eject the milk into the mouth, into the nipple, and then into the mouth of the baby. This is the classical function that we know about oxytocin. Another function of the oxytocin is in the pregnant woman at the time of parturition and end of pregnancy. Oxytocin will work to stimulate the contraction of the womb, myometer, and then and then push the process of parturition. In these way, I can say that oxytocin has two functions. During the pregnancy, that the concentration of oxytocin raise gradually and reach the highest at the time of parturition, and another is during the breastfeeding. But you can imagine that this is somehow very simplified. It could not be correct. If we imagine that a hormone like oxytocin is released and just it has two functions, just in one sex and in female, and just in one period, very short period of time of the life, in the pregnant woman and during the breastfeeding. What about the other times of the female? What about the male body? Oxytocin has nothing to do. This is not true. And this shows that we somehow neglected some function of oxytocin. As I told you, your book is just mentioning to this part, but I want to share a figure about the circuits that are involved in the regulation of our motivation system, regulation of our reward system, factors that affect our brain and stimulate our reward system, our pleasure system, factors that affect our motivation to do something, are passing through these nuclei. And you know, these nuclei are the central hub that regulate our motivation, our reward, our punishment. And at the center, we have ventral tegmental area, we have nucleus accumbens, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, hippocampus. These centers are also involved in the memory formation. And you know that the most important hormone that, let me to say neurotransmitter, not hormone, the most important neurotransmitter that is involved in this process is dopamine. You know, dopamine is known to be involved in the motivation, in the reward, in the pleasure. And you can see that blue lines show that dopamine affect the hippocampus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, has synapses on the nucleus accumbens, on the VP center, and it is released from the ventral tegmental area, and almost all the nucleus are affected by the dopamine. It is very clear, I am sure. But there are some other neurotransmitters, such as glutamate. Yeah, that you see, glutamate is released from amygdala, is released from prefrontal cortex, is released from this area, and affect all these nuclei again. Another neurotransmitter is the red lines. You can see that it is released from VP and affect nucleus accumbens, ventral tegmental area. Nucleus accumbens also release the GABA, and this GABA will affect the VP, will affect the ventral tegmental area. This figure shows that we have a combination of neurotransmitters that are working to regulate our motivation, our pleasure, our reward system. But studies have shown that in different areas of the brain, including these nuclei, the receptor for oxytocin are found. And the question that raised is here: if oxytocin was just involved in the process that I told you, what is the role of these receptors here? If the receptors are available in the nucleus accumbens, if the receptors are found in the prefrontal cortex, in the hippocampus, in the amygdala, in the ventral tegmental area, if these receptors are available in these centers, then the question is that what is the role and what is the function of these nuclei in these centers? And these studies open one new chapter, one new area about the oxytocin. It was found, for example, in this very important circuit, as you see, it is released from the hypothalamus. It affects nucleus accumbens. These purple lines is very clear. You see that it affects ventral tegmental area. It affects hippocampus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex. Almost all these nuclei have receptor for oxytocin, and all these nuclei are affected by the oxytocin. Therefore, it is very logical to assume that oxytocin is involved in the motivational system, in the reward system, in the pleasure system. And then further studies shown that this is true. It was found that oxytocin, and also the same principle are also found for the vasopressin also. I just mentioned the oxytocin, but you should know that similar function are also found for the vasopressin. It was found that oxytocin is involved in several behavioral systems. For example, that these behaviors are somehow dependent on the motivational system and pleasure system that I told you. For example, so let me to bring you some example. For example, maternal behavior. Maternal behavior means a mother that devotes its life for caring about the baby. This is a very unique function that we have in human and animals. Even somehow in animal it is very clear. This maternal behavior is dependent on the oxytocin. In fact, I can say that the oxytocin that is released during the milk breastfeeding, during the pregnancy, not only control the pregnancy and breastfeeding, but also affect the behavior of mother. In fact, oxytocin is a hormone that is involved in pair bonding between the mother and the baby. This is a behavior of the animal. I'm not going to simplify the subject and say everything is oxytocin. No. Oxytocin is a central factor in a combination of factors that are working, but oxytocin has a weight in this balance. Even in the maternal defense and aggression, that mothers that have a baby in the animals, they may be aggressive because they try to protect their babies. This is a function of oxytocin. Even this function, it has been shown that in these function could be disappeared when oxytocin system is disrupted. For example, in animals, mothers that have babies and they are caring about their pups, when the antagonist of the receptor of the oxytocin is injected into these animals, suddenly the mother will give up taking care of the babies, and even do not feed them even to the state that the babies are dying. This shows that pair bonding depend not just by oxytocin, but oxytocin is the central factor in this. Even in animal territory, the selective aggression, I mean that some animal that try to protect the babies of their herd, this is another function of the oxytocin. Again, it is a function. You know that oxytocin have been shown to, in the human, it has been shown that it is involved in reduction in the drug craving. In fact, those who have higher level of oxytocin have lower tendency for the addiction and drug craving. This is a function of the oxytocin. This is a behavioral function of the oxytocin, and it is not limited to female. It is found in two sexes. It triggers protective instincts for the animals. It has been shown that when oxytocin is being is blocked, these protective behavior will be terminated or little decreased. Oxytocin have been shown to be involved in sexual arousal, and also it is a hormone that is involved in the attraction that happen between male and female. And in fact, I can say that it is involved in the bonding between a pair, and for this reason it is a pair bonding. Sometimes in the literature and in some texts, the oxytocin is named as love hormone. In fact, it has been shown that the oxytocin play a role in this attachment that happen between one male and female. And in the animals, that most animals are polygamous, but one sex is with several others. But in some animals that are monogamous, seasonal monogamous, or permanent monogamous, when oxytocin is being inhibited, they are separated from each other. This shows that oxytocin do not just boost sexual arousal, but also make the attraction to happen. And for this reason, it is named as love hormone. Again, pay attention. I'm not going to say love is just by oxytocin. Sex hormone are involved, other factor, environmental factor, cultural factors are also involved, but oxytocin also is as a central factor in this area. As you see, oxytocin is involved in the social behavior, changing the social behavior. I bring you some example about the for example, oxytocin that change the trust in human. It has been shown that the oxytocin also affect the generosity of the people. Those who have higher oxytocin are more generous, more willing to give their resources to another person or another member of the population, of their family or their population. Oxytocin is been shown even to affect the sleep and improve the quality of sleep. These are the oxytocin function that was somehow neglected. These are behavioral function of oxytocin. You can see it has attachment. It is involved in the attachment. It is involved in the fear learning. Because you saw that oxytocin was found, receptor for oxytocin was found in the amygdala, and therefore it is involved in the formation of memory and emotional memory. Oxytocin, as I told you, promote attachment. It solidify relationship. It is involved in the process. Why? If I ask you why we prefer to protect and accept our own baby, not a baby that is adopted. This is again the function of oxytocin. I'm not going to tell you that nobody has a tendency to adopt a baby, but the attachment that everybody has with its own baby or own family baby, for example, my nephew or cousin, is much more strong than adoptive children. It has been shown in the brain that oxytocin also is able to relieve some level of stress, protect neuronal system against stress such as oxidative stress, inflammation. Several studies have shown that even during the development, even in the adult brain, it is able to combat against neuroinflammation. And therefore, that babies that are living with their parent, therefore the parent, they hug them every day. They have strong familial relation. Therefore, they have higher level of oxytocin. They have better development in the brain. This explains that why we say that separation of a baby from the mother is a stressful situation, because one of the reasons is that because oxytocin is decreasing, because they are not receiving the mother love. And this is another feature that is less noticed about oxytocin. There are several books, several literature. There are also several paradox in the effect of oxytocin, because I told you oxytocin is working in a background of hormonal, environmental, cultural factors. Therefore, sometimes we have some paradox in the effect of the oxytocin. But for now, I can tell you that oxytocin is a behavioral hormone. Even though that I'm not able to tell you 100%, 1.100%, but I am sure that it is involved in this process. And it also has been shown not only in the brain, but also in the metabolism. Also, oxytocin is involved. For example, you see here that oxytocin is involved in the food intake. It has been shown that this is a screenshot of a recent article that you see. When we administer oxytocin, a person is able to better control the way the food intake. It increases the motivation for the control of food intake and weight control. Not only it is involved in the regulation of food intake, that again it is a behavior, but also it has been shown that oxytocin also affect the metabolism by affecting the adipose tissue, pancreas to release more insulin, adipose tissue and muscle to increase glucose uptake, to increase their insulin sensitivity. And in this way, I can say that oxytocin is a insulinotropic hormone that helps the insulin to better exert its effect. It is again another function. And you see that pancreatic cell, beta cell regeneration will happen by oxytocin. I can say that therefore oxytocin helps to protect us against diabetes. On the other hand, in the bone, it has been shown that it protects the bone from osteoporosis by stimulating calcium uptake, by stimulating bone formation. These all effects show that oxytocin is a link between our behavior, our metabolism, and somehow I have no evidence for this, but I can say that those who have better emotional life, relationship, and higher level of oxytocin may be protected against diabetes, against osteoporosis. I bring you a screenshot of a paper that is coming out and showing that it can be used for treatment of diabetes and osteoporosis. And when we know that which factor stimulate oxytocin, I told you attachment is one of the factors, emotional factor, social living, against of isolation. All these factors will stimulate the oxytocin release, and this show why the isolation, why living alone, why those who have not a connection with their families, these persons are at higher risk of behavioral problem, or now the metabolic problem. It is all the thing we know about oxytocin is very, very limited, and this is the first step to know the oxytocin that is involved in this process. Vasopressin also is have the same some function that are similar to the oxytocin, but oxytocin is better studied. But vasopressin is also involved in this process that because we have not enough time, I'm not going to tell you about it. About oxytocin, research is still undergoing, is continuous. There are several, for example, intranasal oxytocin, that several studies that use intranasal oxytocin to study the behavior of the human. There are several results. Sometimes the results are paradoxical, that I told you it is because of the background and other factors. But here I am going to finish this part, and by just telling you that therefore neurohypophyse release two hormones, but these two hormones are involved in the process that is less considered, and these functions was very briefly monitored, was very briefly presented for you. By this slide, the posterior pituitary gland and the hormone of the posterior pituitary gland was discussed, and I will finish this part here because it passed the time and the file will be heavy. Therefore, I finish this part, and in next section I will continue this discussion by discussion about the anterior pituitary gland. Until that time, take care and have a good time.